Where do you start, John? It's so realistic. Oh my God.
You're just about ready to start. Politicians about that's very rough. Change a lot of some of our friends who are neighbors from nearby towns to help us formulate a sensible approach which we can live with for a while. We're thinking of Fort Devens, the year 2000, and what part can citizens play? Change is in the air. Change is always an opportunity, provided we can use it. The decommissioning of Fort Devens and the suggestion that the state needs a second airport is part of a much larger process of change. It's not local, it's not statewide, it's not even just national, it's international. Henry Kissinger said a year or so ago that the end of the Cold War gives more opportunity for creative change in Europe than at any time since 1815. That's when Europe was trying to adjust to the end of Napoleon. And this is a time of change, too. We in the League think that we would like to work with the towns in central Massachusetts to develop a strategy that is wise, far-seeing, and sustainable for a long run. We should all be informed, and we should participate in finding a strategy that represents consensus. We in the League pledge our best efforts to play the part which is appropriate for us, to use the skills that we have, and to devote time to an organized effort. It is my pleasure to introduce to you, who many of you know, Millie Chandler, who in this context represents the Citizens to Protect Residential Harvard, and she will introduce our panel. Millie?
Good evening. I'm pleased to speak to you and to see a good crowd here tonight. That's very rewarding. We have with us two speakers. A third had an emergency and was unable to be here, but we're happy to have with us Nancy Reed from Bolton. Nancy Reed is presently a land assessor in Bolton, but her background has come from chemical engineering. Gives her a lot of background to offer in the areas of the fight that we have ahead of us in ways that most of us haven't thought, environmental ways. She also is presently a chairman or a member of the ASSERT steering committee, ASSERT being the coalition of towns that was organized as an outgrowth of the Fort Devens steering committee. To her left is our other speaker, Don McIver, who comes with a number of different hats that he has worn and training backgrounds, biologist, communications, computer, environmental education, land use, and presently he's a member also of the ASSERT steering committee. He is also chairman of the transportation committee of the Massachusetts Association of Conservation Commissions and director of the Massachusetts Conservation Commission, where he has been involved for over 15 years. He lives in Littleton, so it's nice to have two neighbors be with us, and we feel that we're not alone in this. There are lots of communities involved, and especially nice to have two neighboring communities here tonight. I'd like to open now with Nancy as our first speaker, and she'll tell you her topic and continue. We will then have Don McIver speak, and then there will be, pardon? All right. Then there will be a chance for another presentation, a message actually from the Board of Selectmen. The members were not able to be here, but they have sent their greetings and a message, and we'll have that following, and then we will be ready for interaction and questions.
This is a friendly audience. Who wants the airport? Okay. Well, I always start out with a story about my southern upbringing, so nobody sits there and wonders where that funny accent comes from. As a young lady, of course, I grew up someplace, and it was Savannah, Georgia. And in those days, Savannah, Georgia was a very blighted area. There were some beautiful homes that were decaying, and it was also a time of urban renewal. And at that time, a lot of the Chamber of Commerce of Savannah got together and said, well, what we need is a brand new city. We're going to tear this old thing down, and we're going to start brand new. Well, some ladies got together, and they thought, well, that's not really what our vision is. Our vision is the Old South, and we think that that's where we can make our stand. So the Chamber of Commerce immediately attacked and said, these are awfully nice ladies, but they don't know nothing about money. Well, those nice ladies found the biggest, richest, largest banker they could find. And he supported their efforts, and they developed a new vision for Savannah, Georgia. And just those little group of ladies did it because they had a vision. And that's what I'd like to say to you. Unless we develop a vision of where we came from and what we want to be, it's going to be very difficult to direct this present crisis in the direction that we want it to go in. Now, this is going to be interesting. Is that one all right there?
Okay, different microphone.
If you stand there, it's very hard to see the screen.
Okay, how's that?
Better.
Okay. All right? All right. This is flight versus flight or blight. Couldn't help it. Can't resist those things. So vision comes from the past to direct the future. Right now you have 4 selectmen on a redevelopment board appointed by Well. I would just very quickly, since I only have 10 to 15 minutes, say that I believe that all of the communities should get together and lend them a hand, that we all need to determine our future fate. items I have is I will be trying to lay down in a form what are the things that must be done in order to successfully defeat an enemy. And then Don will direct his attention to specific things that he has done in his experience to make things happen. So accidentally, these things should work out fairly well together. The first thing is that to motivate people, which is a real necessity because the town of Harvard isn't going to be able to do this alone. To motivate people, the threat has to be substantial. Now, I'm afraid that there are an awful lot of people in the surrounding towns who feel that if it's not right next door to them, it's not a problem. In fact, I believe that there may be people, even in the towns of Bolton and Harvard, who feel that if they live across town, it may not be a problem for them. So we have a real job of education to do. And just to give you an example of that, things that we need to talk about, we need to say, look, people in East Boston say that there are times when those jets go over their heads every 13 seconds. There are times when not only do they see it, hear it, feel it, but they taste it. They're drenched in kerosene. They're drenched in carbon deposits. Can't put your laundry out. Those are things that's hard for us to visualize because we haven't had any experience with it. But we have a lot to learn from people of East Boston. All right, so you're East Boston, Harvard, let's face it. We are East Boston. We're the future East Boston. What about somebody in Clinton? What are we going to say to them to get them motivated? Well, Jamaica Plain. Jamaica Plain is 6 miles away from the airport. It's taken Jamaica Plain 16 years to get the FAA to even consider an alternative route over their city. 16 years. And that's not a sure thing. That's just to take a look at it and see if indeed there might be a route that would impact fewer people. And by the way, once an airport goes in, we're all pretty much reduced down to discussing which is the least harmful route. The next one is the threat must be imminent. It's another problem. This is a real problem. We've got an executive department in our state government who's pretty much decided what they want to do. Secretary Taylor, I want to build an airport. On the other hand, you've got people saying, oh, not until the year 2010. What are you worried about? That, folks, is a real problem. Those two are really hard to figure out how to convince people that this is a threat now. Okay, the decision's been made, then what are the impacts on the communities? Let's try to convince people that this is a real threat, that their property values will be destroyed, their future, their children will be destroyed. They are, as a matter of fact, destroying these communities for the potential benefit of other communities. The leaders of the proponents must be obvious and accessible. Another real problem we've got, because they're in hiding. They're not coming out. They have meetings, they have a public meeting, and they've already decided everything they're going to say. There's no discussion at those meetings. The governor and Lieutenant Governor Salucci have not yet said how they feel about this. Until you can find the enemy, until you can identify them, it's kind of hard to fight them, isn't it? A lot of political battles have been won on that alone. Well, what do you do about that? Well, what do you do when you have a battle and you don't see anybody? You draw them out, don't you? Get aggressive. Find them. How can we do that? Well, that's one reason why we formed a CERT, because occasionally we feel aggressive, and we thought it might be fun to use that aggression. And one thing you can do is you can all decide that you're going to have a meeting with the governor, and you can tell the governor in a nice letter you're going to be there on December the 2nd. And you don't wait for an answer, because frankly, you'll wait forever. You might never hear from him. You just go.
on December the 2nd. You say, here we are. Where's the meeting? You could do that. You could also try something interesting like the public records law, which we've already begun as of today. And you take a little piece of paper, it looks pretty innocent, and it says, I want to look through your files. That makes them nervous. I don't know if the shredders are going as I speak, but that's a surefire technique, and that we started today. And there's another tactic that we've begun, and I think Don will probably talk about that one. The other is lobbying. We've got to start lobbying. On October the 22nd, we have a legislators' luncheon where we feed them in hopes that we get a chance to talk to them. And we have a lot of help. There are some friendly legislators there. Hopefully the unfriendly ones will come too, though, because we need to talk to them. We need to get a sense of what they want and how we can help them. The threat must have technical and technical, economic, or political flaws. Well, we've got that. We've got, well, that's my impact. Has everybody seen this? This is an impact example of how things can impact communities. Harvard, of course, is right here, Harvard Center, and this is Fort Devens. This is a TCA. Basically what that means is the airplanes are flying within certain altitudes as they're coming down. And Jamaica Plain, by the way, 6 miles away, they're only 3,500 feet up. So that means that 6 miles away would mean Groton, Lunenburg, Shirley, Leominster, Lancaster, Clinton, Bolton, Stowe, Hudson. Those communities would be like Jamaica Plains. I hope Lancaster's listening. I hope Leominster's listening. Technical data, yes, we have that. We can show that their projections have been wrong in the past, and their projections are likely to be wrong now. And I'm not going to take time to talk about these, but basically, these are their projections, and that's where we're actually at. Economics, that's harder. But we can talk about property tax per acre. We can talk about average income that go to workers in various types of businesses that we put at Fort Devens. Employment per acre. Boy, we can do a lot better in almost any business other than an airport. Problem is, does anybody care? Because they figure that their business is doing a lot better a couple towns over, and they're not too concerned about what business is doing here. Next one is an alternative solution must be easily understood and accepted by the general public. The solution must be attainable within the near future. We've got to have a solution that we can offer because frankly, even if there are technical flaws, and there are, people still have this vision. How many times have I heard, we need an airport, they say. I said, why? Well, because it took me an hour and a half to get to Logan. So it's not the problem that Logan cannot handle the traffic. It's the problem that people are being inconvenienced by the lack of ground transportation. That's the real issue. And we have to draw that out. Because obviously it would be a lot easier to come down Route 2 and come to Devens than it would be to go to Logan for certain people. So what's the alternative? The alternative has to be something that the public can understand. And so far it's been pretty successful. You say to people, well, what we need is good ground transportation, and we need a good rail system. And so far I've only found one person that said to me, oh, are you trying to take us back to the 30s? This is the 90s. Most people are saying, that's a great idea, let's go to rail. Has to be popular to the general public. It's not just our towns. We need to convince most of the other people in the state. we're really lucky because maybe rail's time has finally come. High-speed trains are coming to North America. There's a group that's going to be speaking in Lancaster tomorrow night. They're from the Northeast Corridor Initiative. They will be telling us what's happening in Washington. Washington is unfortunately where it's at. That's why we need to get to Washington. That's where the money's going to come from to build this new high-speed rail. They'll electrify the line from New Haven to Boston, and they'll get us to New York in 3 hours. And that, by the way, is making 2 stops. Politically, by the way, one thing that's good about rail is that rail will allow us to spread the wealth around, and that's really important. Because, yeah, it's true, an airport can be a real bonus, real fast boom. But anything that booms fast also tends to bust fast. So we emphasize that rail can be built throughout the state. We can build a nice corridor from Boston to New York. We can connect that line to Springfield, like the governor wants. Then we'll just take it right down to Bradley. I don't know if he wants that or not, but we'll do that. And then we'll take it down to Hartford. And then we'll just go right on to New York City that way too. The idea of SIP-Plan and its supporters is that integrated systems means just that. It's a network of systems. They'll be far more effective and we'll have many more choices. And the last item was once you get this rail system working, it may not be as good as you might hope it's going to be. So what are your alternatives? Well, you have to have something that's the next generation. And right now, as we know, the next generation is maglev. So once we get a system moving with rail, then we'll start talking about the new generation of rail and how much better it will be. And if people feel more comfortable, we could even talk about making the seats real tight together, and we could serve lunches with the little plastic platters and the little spoons. And we'll do anything anyone wants to make you feel that they're in an airplane.
What is maglev?
Maglev is a new rail system. It's sort of a advanced system. It essentially floats. Repulses that are forces of magnitude, sort of think of it like that. They're quieter than modern trains, and by the way, that's something we have to address, is that trains are not quiet, but trains are also easier to control their impacted sound than airplanes. So now Don's going to talk about how to turn all of this into political action and sign everyone in this room up to work. Thank you.
When I saw the notice for what we were going to talk about, it's Fort Devens year 2000, how citizens can play a part. I realized we were really start addressing 2 issues. One, what's going to happen in Fort Devens, sort of a reuse issue, which the military hasn't given up as of yet. And the second is really in the airport. That's the most imminent danger that comes along and the largest impact. So as you can see, they're both intertwined. And I think that's we really have to deal with both issues. So in my quick run through areas, I'm going to cover 10 areas real quickly, and I can go in more detail in the questions and answer period if you so desire. And the computer that I generated this on had nice little airplane bullets. Just quickly, the history of this, I'm not going to go a whole lot of detail in, but I think you should know something about it. The second major airport issue has come up in the past, came up in the 70s, when they claimed that we'd run out of air capacity and the sky was going to fall, and it hadn't. They were dumb enough to try to locate it in Dover. That did not work, so here they come back again in the 90s, and with the same arguments. This time they've come back with the support of the New England Council, which is a consortium of different businesses that claims their mission is the mission of each business, and there's some quick money to be made in building things, some specialized building of things, and I think that's what's really driving this. Certainly their report had gotten a lot of favor by the current administration. That's what they're following. For many of you in the know who have been at the August 26th meeting last week of August, and was quickly switched there when they did the citing to cut out the public, elected officials and the public. Certainly they voted on the 3 sites, and before they made the motion, before they did the vote, New England Council had a press release congratulating Matt on selecting 3 sites, and Matt had the 3 sites already named for perhaps as much as an hour before that vote. We have gone to the Attorney General's office, and we have asked him to investigate. The Attorney General is investigating, but I wouldn't expect a miracle cure from that. The real important issue to understand is that the public has been cut out of the process. This is really a process where the governor has an idea to build an airport. The lieutenant governor believes in that. We've gone to meetings with the Secretary of Transportation and Construction, Taylor, and he quickly summarizes, I want to build an airport. I guess the previous person in that position built a super roadway, and that was the jewel in his crown. This person wants an airport. And the people making the decision are a 5-person board, some of which have never served in any civic capacity whatsoever. And they're aviation hobbyists. Some of their qualifications for being there is that they've raised 6-figure sums for the current governor for his election. And they know dilly squat about planning. So those are the people deciding. And it's really amazing that there are no elected officials, no town officials. Virtually everyone else has been cut out of the process, let alone public citizens. So that's the history you should know. Whoops, I guess we're going to keep this here. Just real quickly, possibilities for reuse in case studies. Well, I can go into some case studies, but that isn't the full purpose here. You can ask questions about it if you want to. Certainly the one use that has been suggested mostly is an airport larger than JFK International Airport, and I've heard some people say something about larger in O'Hara. What comes out is that it's going to be the 9th or 10th largest airport in the world that is being suggested for here. And you've heard a little bit about comments from Nancy about what the people in East Boston say about an airport, how you can actually feel the grit, and they've been fighting since the 60s. We have gone to them, we've talked to them, and I think you really should consider collaborating with them. And they realize a lot of people don't collaborate with them. They say let's do a number of issues, some of it's class, some of it's a number of other issues, but the way to win battles is to collaborate. And I think there are a lot of good studies for that. Just so I'm honest to the bullet here, reuse, various things have been discussed about the reuse of Fort Devens, because that's part of the issue here. Wildlife refuge, maybe the southern portion, they won't mind unexploded ordinances, hopefully. Housing, maybe a small business park with a business campus with an air park, recreational use, and community facilities. There are a lot of other possibilities and a lot of case studies. You should look at things such as the Watertown Arsenal, Westover Air Force Base, Charlestown Navy Yard, Chelsea Hospital. Those are some studies in Massachusetts. To move on to potential impacts. For the second major airport, those impacts are very irreversible in the long term. You can't turn anything back. And it's more than just the airport, it's the secondary growth. There's some real dangers there. And I think they really fall in 3 different areas: community impacts, including quality of life, especially for the inability to exert local controls over an airport. There's a new federal law, 1990, saying that for any new airport, you can't have any control on hours of operation. You can have it working 24 hours a day as a cargo port. You have no control over the flight pattern. That's the big issue that Jamaica plane thought they won on. After 14, 16 years, they got to experiment on running a different runway. Or even the frequency, the direction of the frequency. So there will be absolutely no local control. That's a federal law, so you have no control over that. Almost anything else you have control over. At Logan, there are a lot of controls right now. The fact there is a question about putting a cap on Logan so it won't expand. If that happens, that may well push the airport out here. That's another reason why you should talk to people in East Boston. I think if you want them not to put a cap on Logan, you have to offer them something too. Both sides have something to benefit from. And certainly the environmental impacts. The best summary I've seen of it is what's put out by the National River Watershed Association in their white paper. Now I have a bunch of those papers over here with a press release on top of it proposing the citing of the short list, which is a nice summary. So that's attached too. The real question is what's going to happen to Boston's water supply that goes to the Wachusett Reservoir. All the quabbling water goes through there and feeds 43 communities in Greater Boston. And there's real danger of secondary growth impacting upon that. And certainly economic impacts, the secondary development I've already mentioned. Possible outcomes, well, the thing that seems most guaranteed is that if people do not oppose what's being suggested and they have no effective input from affected communities, then it's quite likely a second major airport will be built. That's the one thing that seems guaranteed. So you have to really think of the cost benefit of this. It's worth pointing out the opposition now. And I guess I failed to mention in the beginning is that in the history part about the public being cut out, I mean, you certainly look at how the redevelopment board has been put together. Local towns have very little control. A lot of people are from far afield, and they could care less really what happens here. And they don't really understand what is here. So moving on to community action case studies. I've looked at sort of my experience over the last 15 years of different projects I've seen coming before conservation commissions and planning groups in the Greater Boston area primarily, but covering a larger area too. And I really see some patterns. Sometimes administrative hero emerges. That was the case with the inner belt in the Cambridge-Boston area when Route 2 and 3 were going to be expanded. And there's a lot of community action, but the hero that came up was Frank Sargent. And in this administration, I don't see any hero emerging, quite frankly. Another case is collaboration, special legislation. In the Alewife area, which probably most of you know as a bottleneck, for the people there, they know of a different battle, and it was really the towns of Arlington, Belmont, and Cambridge that pulled together, and as they put it, it's the second time they collaborated. The first time was in 1776. And they learned to collaborate, and it worked very effectively. There's special legislation now that prevents a $50 million interchange, which is about 300 feet wide, raised roadways, a lot of crazy plans that are planned there. And I should point out, when that was being pushed through, it was pushed through at the cabinet level, secretary position, and essentially the state lied continuously to the community. That does happen. You have to get used to that. I mean, you may think these people are experts and they wouldn't do that. They do that. Let me promise you, they do that. Also, litigation is another example. Senator Ivory's a good case, and that's another case where lying happens. And Scheme Z is the area where it's the world's largest spaghetti interchange. It goes over the Charles River, 12 stories high, a couple hundred feet wide, 18 lanes of roadway, and that connects in a loop-de-loop of 70 acres of land, of shoreland. And that's being litigated now. There's some mediation was suggested. Mediation is not a good solution, but litigation is what it's come down to. Community action is also a very strong, powerful weapon. And a good example of community action and PR is the STOP group, which you've been seeing. 20 towns have been trying to meet with the governor to address the SIP-plan issues about comprehensive integrated transportation plan versus a second major airport. And the governor really could care less to meet with the 20 towns. Larry the Lobster had no problem meeting with the governor. So I think what you have to do is find snazzy, sexy ways of getting attention. And the STOP group did do that. This is the group fighting the outfall pipe. They're a group from Cape Cod. But they also sent 10,000 postcards. They got 32,000 signatures. And they made a lot of PR events. That's the way to make things happen. I think that's a very effective way. And political persistence. In New Braintree prison people went everywhere the governor went. That was very effective. And they had their logo, the cow with the prison bars in front of it. And I think this logo, such as Stop the Airport with the airplane and the slash circle, is a very effective logo. I think that's something we have to learn something about. And also the Walpole people who still got stuck with this sludge bid, they did some very effective things too. It was a court order from a different quarter that really changed things there. And certainly a lot of experiences from East Boston and Jamaica Plain about Logan, and we have to benefit from those. Possible collaboration, there are a lot of different groups you can collaborate with, and collaboration is the way to go. There are different MAC sites in the short list. There's the Uxbridge Douglas area, there's the Winchendon Gardner area. Those are certainly areas we all should be working with, and we've done fairly well. But there's also the East Boston and Logan opponents. They need to be collaborated with, and they're the people that find Hanscom expansion, and they've been somewhat successful. We should collaborate with them. I've talked to some people from Acton, they say, oh yeah, we're concerned about Hanscom, but they know nothing about what's happening here. Acton is not that far away. We should be working together. And also the Central Massachusetts Legislative Caucus, which is bipartisan, is a very effective way to go. It's a good way to reach the Massachusetts congressional delegation, which can say no to federal funding. I've heard a little bit about SIPLAN. That's the organization for towns. It's a good way to go. More towns should get on board. It's up to 20 towns now. There's a CERT, which is a citizens organization, and what it stands for is Advocates for a Strong Economy with Responsible Transportation. Economy means a variety of things, managing of resources and commodities, quality of life, I think should fall in there. And there are other citizens groups. I can go into more detail. And there are tools as well, and so there's some tools you should think of. And if you want to, I can later put up a slide on these. Community action collaboration is the strongest, I think. There's SIPLAN and CERT, local groups that you know of. Education forums such as this. Town votes and polls, surveys, those are helpful. Influencing state and state elections and elections for national office. We'd certainly ask anyone that's running for office what their position is and write letters correspondingly. PR, spreading the word here in Greater Boston. In Greater Boston, people hear, well, second major airport, sure, yeah, let's build one. They haven't even thought about whether we need it or not. We find when we talk to people, say, oh, I really haven't considered that. So there's a whole education process. Unfortunately, Boston does seem psychologically some distance away. And I mean, usually this issue comes up from the western part of the state where everyone hates Boston, but it seems like psychologically there's a long distance between Central Mass and where government has decided. You have to educate people there, a lot of people there. And it's influential, and you have to write in their newspapers. So you have to get them to think, do we really need a second major airport, and what are the impacts? And what are the alternatives? A lot of good alternatives that haven't been considered. Use radio and TV media. Some people are doing this already. Write newspapers, talk with the reporters. A lot of us talk with the reporters quite a bit. A good thing to do is debunk wrong perceptions. There's some very strong wrong perceptions. We went to talk to some people in East Boston and said, well, build a second major airport any place, just get rid of this stuff. This is a great economic wonder, that's a poor community. And they said, just get rid of it. And so I said, well, Fort Devens, that's already an airport. They think there's a large airport out there. I think that has to be debunked. People in Douglas Uxbridge think this is already developed. I think they have to know that it's not developed, there's a small airstrip. Right call legislators, that does count. And you have to guide them to do what is right sometimes, but also you have to empower them to do what's right. Even if they believe in a cause, they often don't have the power to do it unless a lot of people make them do it. There's some good anecdotes from Franklin Delano Roosevelt, who was in favor of doing a lot of social programs, and someone talked and said, well, here it is, and it asked if he agreed with it. He said yes, and his response was, make me do it. And it's true. To do it, you sometimes have to empower legislators to do the right thing. Individual action goes from probing and discovering, the Freedom of Information Act we've heard a little bit about. Certainly registering formal complaints. A group of us registered a complaint with the Attorney General's office. The Attorney General is now doing an investigation. It does work. Empower citizens organizations. That means with money and volunteering. If Republican, then you have a special opportunity. You can strategically donate on a local level for the right person doing the right thing. There are Republican candidates there who are against the airport and refuse to give money to the state and federal level and tell them why. Tell them you're against this airport and it's a Republican governor that's pushing it through and leaving out the public. I think that's a very effective mechanism. What you have to do is stand up and assert your right, the right of towns to really have control over their own destiny. That's what this is really about. We've been left out of the process. And just quickly, what is required to be successful? It's making a strong commitment now. You'll be amazed how cost effective it is to do stuff now, whereas down the line, it's real costly, real expensive. That means spending time. It's worth making the time for. You may not think you have the time now, but believe me, it's worth time now, because what you can do is get a political kill on this idea, and that's worth it versus fighting it in the courts. Money is needed. It's very cost effective now. Large donations and small donations. Right now, newsletters get sent out from people spending money from their own pocket. Same thing with photocopying, bumper stickers, postcards, any of that stuff. You have to have money to do that. And if we had a staff person, that'd be great. I mean, we've given up sleeping. It takes a lot of work. So personal energy and effort is worth it, and also providing information. In any organization like this, we always find people on the other side get offended by what's being proposed, and they're very helpful. And if you happen to be one of those people, we would like to talk to you. And what to avoid? I think this is real essential. Yeah, I realize I'm probably a little bit over, but I think it's important to understand what to avoid, and that's pitting one community against each other. And any of these projects, that's what the state depends upon, pitting one community against another community. So one community says, not here, but stick it over there. If you can collaborate, you can beat that. That does work. It is winnable. The thing to avoid is excluding the public. The thing to avoid is waiting to react rather than be proactive. They may be dormant, they may act dormant, but they're not. The thing to avoid is unwillingness to collaborate with others and failing to make an immediate, strong commitment. Failing to trust and communicate with other communities is something to avoid. Debunk rumors, work with them, go to their meetings, help them out. Another thing to avoid is being seduced by a deceptive benefits package. Now, they've yet to do a good study here, but they're talking about benefits packages already, because what they're trying to do is crack the system and try to get someone on board with them. And what seems like a nice benefits package rarely is as nice as it looks. And there are hidden costs to a lot of this. And you have to look at that. Anyone on a planning board should know that, and it's true for many other people. So what is needed now? And it's really a strong commitment to act, as well as resolve to see issues through to a satisfying resolution. If you don't solve the issues now, they will come back to haunt you, even if they're not real issues. Even if we don't need a second major airport, we should deal with the transportation issues, because it will come back and back. That's typical of land use. No one asked for this, but doing nothing is far worse than making time for dealing with it now. And just to summarize the community action aspect of this, I do have a good slide which should mostly fit here. That's Gary Larson cartoon. And it says the sheep standing up say, wait, listen to me. We don't have to be just sheep. Even if you're sheep, you can be very effective by collaborating. It's worth it. Thank you.
Thank Nancy and Don for their presentations. I have another presentation that will just take a few minutes. Marge Darby would like to represent or give a message from the selectmen, and I'd also like to later introduce Phil Shutt, who's with us tonight too.
I'm not quite sure how it got to be that I'm representing the selectmen. However, I do want to convey to you that they are very concerned. They are very unhappy that they could not be here tonight. Dana Owens called. He's out of state on business, and he not only wanted to express his regrets, but that he wants to convey his support for this grassroots effort. I had a long talk with John Petrin, who went on at great length about what the three selectmen feel very strongly about. I want to tell you that the comments that he gave to me were, of course, made prior to this presentation. But I think it's nice to know that we are all thinking alike. So if there's some repetition, there's an advantage to that. There, first of all, is going to be a meeting scheduled next Wednesday. It will be here in Harvard,
And it is going to be a meeting of the selectmen from the towns of the 3 selected sites. They would like as many of you as possible to turn out for that. Unfortunately, when I spoke to John today, he didn't have a place, but they will post it. They hope to have it here, but you'll just have to check and hope it will be posted in enough places that we'll all be able to find out where to go. The selectmen say that they feel inundated, but they're not discouraged. They have need for many volunteers, and for example, they have a list of people who have to be spoken to. And it takes time out of a work day to get around to all the people that need to be called. They want to find a way to organize and structure the support. Their goal, John feels, is to create a grassroots organization that's broad-based. And they would like us to think regionally. They don't want us to consider a name that is more regional and not local. Uxbridge, Douglas are already calling themselves the Blackstone Valley. They'd like us to think of a name in that context. They think we should be holding meetings on a regular basis. They would like to set up liaisons with these other towns, and they need our help to do that. They want us to feel that this is a campaign and that we have to think in terms of a long one, and that it will cost us money. They want us to consider activities, concerts, bumper stickers, stand up, Jean, show us your shirt. And they would also like for us to think creatively about a tag for the airport. The prison in Braintree has been called Wells White Elephant. If we can think of a good one, it will help us. And that's all, and I hope I've done them justice.
Thank you. Now we're going to start our questions that the audience can pose to our panelists. I do want to have Phil Shutt be a part of this in case you have questions that are more local than our 2 guests can answer. And he's in the front row up here, and he's willing to respond. So if you'd like to come back again to the table here, we already have a hand raised.
You can speak.
Go ahead, Frank.
Mayor, my question relates to the broader issue of redevelopment at Fort Devens. The airport is only one option. I think it was Nancy Reed who suggested we should help this representative of the redevelopment board. But I'd like to ask, given the fact that each town directly affected Devens has one representative, that's 4, the North Central Chamber of Commerce has one more representative, that's 5, and he actually is representing more like Leominster, Gardner, Pittsburgh. Even if this block of 5 should agree, somehow Air agree with Lancaster and Shirley agree with Harvard, and they vote together as a block of 5, they're outnumbered by the additional 6 people from outside appointed by the governor. Just how effective do you think this board can be in having this area's opinions and feelings have any effect at all in the decisions that will be made about the redevelopment of Devens?
Sure, I'll start off, Matt. I think that certainly those 5 folks can work some issues together and come up with some sort of agreement. One of the concerns was veto power, and even though the state doesn't allow them to do certain things with veto power, but if they made a pact with themselves, they could make their own rules. I think you'll find out in this situation that if you keep on accepting the rules are given to you, the whole process is going to be very slanted. And I think you have to take some initiative. And I think those people on that board, those different communities should at least work some agreement with themselves that if something seems very wrong for one community, that maybe all of them would vote against it. And you have some more power speaking from the local communities and refusing something that's going to affect you. That's just one aspect. I think also you have to really get a citizens group to get up and make a voice and make an issue out of this. You can't just rely on representatives of the redevelopment committee. Those people will get frustrated and so on. They'll need other people to propose ideas and to force issues.
I think what I'd like to say to that is that most of you are probably aware that the redevelopment board met with MAC prior to them even being a redevelopment board without the selectmen attending that meeting. So it sort of looks like the cards may be stacked already. But there's another question, and that is, what is their jurisdiction? Are they going to look at the entire base? Or are they going, which isn't close. I mean, you're all aware that South Coast, for example, is not part of this Closure Act. Or are they, you didn't know that? Yeah.
How, you mean the entire several thousand acre South Port?
Right, the South Base is part of the Army and the National Reserve. And that is what Congress will probably be signing. The North Base is partly up for grabs and is already an enclave for reserve use that the Army intends to keep. Now, we're not in on this part of the deal, but I think my message would be is that it's not clear, and I spoke to one of the Harvard selectmen a couple of days ago, it's not clear to us exactly what we're looking at when we talk about this redevelopment board. Are they just looking at what's available, which isn't much, from what the Army's going to leave behind? Or do we know something, do they know something we don't know? And that is that the South Base may indeed be available after the next closure, which would be in 2 years. So what I'm suggesting is that if that's a subject which right now isn't going to be discussed by this board, then I would suggest that the towns get together and formulate their own vision of what they would like to see happen to the South Base, because the South Base is clearly where that airport is meant to be.
Next question? Josie?
My big concern is how to weave all the pieces of opposition into a cohesive, unified whole. What publicity events, whatever vehicles we have, can we use to weave this thing? Fragmented, not going to do so well.
Sure. That's always an issue with anything that crosses town boundaries and political boundaries, and there are other boundaries that fall in place there too. Certainly for a lot of the closures I've seen within single communities, and even there are a lot of disagreements. Land use issues are typically the most vicious arguments and emotion-laden issues that people have. I think for collaborative effort, the CERT organization is a fairly good organization for networking between groups, and that was established for that purpose. The CERT, which is, there's a newsletter over there, and we're involved with it because we essentially look at the same issue that you have, is that we need to work together. So it'll be local groups that they'll be pushing their own agendas and so on, but hopefully we'll coordinate them and have them a little more collaborative with the CERT group. And there's a newsletter that does get published, which Nancy knows a little bit more about. We have some copies over there, and it has a calendar of events there. And I believe it's a donation, maybe whoever you choose to get on the mailing list. That's one way of doing it, but you have to work in collaborations and you have to go to a lot of meetings. So if there's a group that forms in Harvard, they essentially should look regionally, but they certainly should have liaisons to other groups as well. And that's what we're doing. I would suggest perhaps showing up at the meeting in Lancaster tomorrow night, where we'll hear about high-speed rail from a guest speaker. There are notices on that table too.
It's really going to be difficult to keep all the towns together, and a CERT is going to probably be run on a project-by-project basis. Our project for next month is awfully important, and we're going to need as many people as we can to help, and that is to go to the legislature, to have a luncheon for them, and to influence them, and that our presence be known. On the other hand, there's a real need for people who want to work independently. For example, Don mentioned something that we think has, well, there are two things. We think there's a lot of hope in two areas. One is political. Where do we get the money to run the Republican Party? Well, there are a couple of ways, I guess. I mean, one is that you can go to this conference, $500 to $5,500 a seat, which was in the Globe today. You could do that if you could, and I guess you get a chance to talk to Wells and Salucci that way. Or, better yet, you could try to influence the money that they get. Now, my husband's a Republican, I'll admit it right now, and he gets calls, and he's now saying, is this a general request? And they'll say, yes, this is for the party. And he'll say, well, no, not until you stop the airport. Somebody else figured they do just the opposite. They say, well, I'll give you $50,000 if you stop the airport. It wasn't my husband.
I'm wondering if there's so many individual groups, and maybe all the towns have League of Women Voters, towns have individual chapters of Audubon societies, and there's regional chapters of just about everything. If every organization could mail to every member in its organization on a regular basis with some of the assert materials, and if the members of the boards or the heads of every organization that has anything to do with land use or politics or the economy would get together and try and have, quarterly meetings or, that kind of thing.
I think it's very helpful, and certainly there are a lot of statewide organizations. I've been writing in the Mass Association of Conservation Commission newsletter that goes straight across the state to 3,000 people. And I think League of Women Voters should write this too and coordinate. They have a newsletter that goes out quarterly. Every social and fraternal group should deal with it. We have people connected to different churches. There is some passing through churches. Churches have caucuses of all denominations that meet monthly. That's a perfectly good social network that's very effective. This is really a community issue, and you have to use all those channels.
More questions? Martin? Could you speak up?
Is there a political process that happens after this? Does it go through the legislature after they pick a site?
Well, it sort of depends on which site they get. If they get Devens, it's hard to say. It looks like it could probably be a deal between the Army and our government, our state government, in which case it might not have to go to a vote for the legislature if it's immediately turned over to a redevelopment board, for example, to some sort of quasi-private public enterprise by the Army. It wouldn't have to go to the legislature at all. Now, if it's Douglas Uxbridge, that probably would, because they're going to have to buy it because it's private land. So they've got that safety net. We're not sure that we have that safety net.
It seems like the easiest way for them to put in an Air Force to go to Devens because it's federal land and they could grab it. And they're legislatively, you can work with the legislators to change things. There's also an environmental process called Massachusetts Environmental Policy Act, which really should have kicked in way back when they spent state money looking at sites, but they said it was too costly and they should get sued on that. There's also a federal process, the National Environmental Policy Act, that should have been kicked in when they're making decisions with federal money, but they should be sued on that too, and they probably will be down the line. And the legislators might have to approve some of the parcels of land. There's Arcanized 7 lands, which are parklands, takes a vote of the legislature. It's really mostly a political issue, and that's where you get the quickest win. It's hard telling what the ways are to control it as far as the process, because a lot of rules have been changed. I mean, the public's supposed to have been involved, but they were really been left out. There's some natural economic ways that should control it, such as in talks to the Senate Chair of Transportation Committee, he said, well, if FAA spent a lot of money and built this thing, I don't see how we could have the money to operate and maintain it. And we'll have it being a Logan, and it probably won't be a white elephant, and we'll probably wind up subsidizing Massport rather than making money. It appears that the governor has been talking in Sapporo. He's talked to the Japanese airline industry, and he wants Japanese airlines to come in this country. He may be going for building a Japanese airline hub there. It's hard telling. There are things that are going on. Certainly none of the American airlines can afford anything at this point. They already have their hubs. So even in economic issues, it seems like there may be people willing to venture money in a new airport.
Yes.
remark at the end just triggered it. What have has anybody talked to any of the American airline companies to find out what they think of this whole idea? I mean, if you thought about letting a foreign airline come in, it seems like you're talking about setting up collaborations. That would be the most natural.
Well, that is a rumor. We're hoping to start tonight.
Yeah, and actually, in all this, it takes a lot of time and effort. I mean, we actually do have jobs that we try to do justice to, ones that pay us for work. It takes a lot of work, and that's one of the problems. We do need volunteers, but just to build upon what you're saying, there are certain things afoot about changing the way foreign national transportation groups, airlines can operate in this country. There's a suggestion I get through President Bush about allowing foreign national airlines to do domestic flights. They don't do that now. There's an act in Congress to allow foreign national airlines to acquire up to 49% of the stock of, I think, American air carriers. So there are things happening out there, and it's real important being aware of all that information. And it's, if Japanese say airline had a hub in Fort Devens, that might be a win for well, but a killer for the American airline industry. You have to think of what people's motivations are here.
Yes?
But I agree that we should be talking to those folks. It's just time and
Do I see a volunteer?
Yeah, if people want to work together,
Thank you.
we'd like to do that. That's something we should be doing.
Good project.
In the back?
Yes, there's a grassroots group in Stowe, Maynard, and Sudbury that is working on trying to clean up the Fort Devens Annex, hazardous waste site, and they do not know how much, where the items were disposed of, or how much it's going to cost to clean up that site. There was an article in our newspaper last week about that, specific to Fort Devens. Do you have any information about that?
No, but that's not atypical of military usage. I mean, military uses a lot of clean agents, and they're listed as the worst polluters. And it also fits into the way things are done. Environmental concerns aren't the highest concern for military groups, and I say as someone who's advised military groups in doing things. And that's unfortunately the way it is. I think what's more interesting is that even though people say, oh, well, okay, there's toxic waste here, it's a Superfund site, they can never build anything because they can't clean up the ground before they transfer the land, which is what they're supposed to do. Look at Pease Air Force Base, which they wavered that on, that set precedent, and that's very scary.
At Stapleton, they could have built just north on federal land where the nerve gas was manufactured. And federal law there prohibited them from building on adjacent land, so it's building a whole new airport.
Yeah.
But I mean, that's an example of that law holding.
Holding, right.
But in Pease, it didn't.
Right. And
And the President Bush or Reagan?
It's just recent, so it's under President Bush, the environment
He
president.
can cancel a law?
Well, I don't know what the mechanism was
No, I
there,
don't think it
but
was Bush. I think it was Congress.
yeah, I'm not quite sure, but I mean, obviously something was greased there to make it work, and that's sort of the fear that, I mean, you read in the papers now that all sorts of controls and regulations are going to be thrown out to be pro-business. Well did say that, you know, only 3 out of 10 people business may talks to make less money than he does. I mean, I think he's talking to the wrong people. I mean, he's being influenced quite strongly, and this is, I think, a case where that's going to happen. New England Council, I think, is pushing quite strongly for a second airport for maybe a variety of reasons.
In the back. Ellie?
I have a question. Conservation Law Foundation involved with these groups at all? I know that they've been very effective in advising and helping this purpose.
Yeah, Bill, do you want to address that?
I can speak to that. I've been, this week I think I have talked to the Conservation Law Foundation at least once each day.
Yeah, I should point out the contact person there is Andy Hamilton for transportation, but they get some awful calls and they can't necessarily return things, so we maintain contact with them.
I have one.
I guess I should amplify that and make it not quite so cryptic. SID-Plan was sort of which is Coalition for an Integrated Transportation Plan, which is a statewide coalition of all the sites that were proposed, of the 12 sites that were proposed across central Massachusetts and southeastern Massachusetts. We sort of established this beginning in May. Then we did manage to establish good working relationships and get the support of 5 major statewide environmental organizations, environmentally oriented organizations, namely Conservation Law Foundation, Massachusetts Audubon, the Sierra Club, the Massachusetts Association of Conservation Commissions, and the Thousand Friends of Massachusetts, so that we have good allies, and we are working together. And since the specific question was about Conservation Law Foundation, we are working with them quite closely on the transportation issue.
Yeah, I think if you are members of those organizations, I'm sure many of you are members of all those organizations, you should encourage them to work more on it. And I gather Mass Audubon has a good article this month.
My question's a little different, and that is that one of our major problems for the future is going to be energy. And it would seem to me, and it must have occurred to other people too, that Fort Devens could be a national center for alternative energy solutions. Research, development, it would be an ideal site. You've got the whole valley for every kind of alternative energy. And if this would have enormous economic advantages to the area. I mean, let's think big. Has that been proposed?
Well, no, but that's something that, again, I'd love to see you on a committee to work on solutions to Fort Devens. That's a darn good solution.
Yeah, it is a good idea. Also, having experimental transportation sites is another good idea. I mean, there are people at MIT, which is one of those sites on consortium that try to run railroads behind the buildings, and Cambridge isn't exactly the place where we do that. It'd be an ideal place for a test laboratory of that nature for energy, transportation, number.
This could use the whole fort, actually.
It'd be good use, academic and practical use.
But it would be necessary, in order to convince the governor that that's a viable use, so that it would bring jobs and other opportunities, it would be something that you have to work out in some detail. The problem is we can't be too esoteric. We have to have some real solutions. We have to be able to counter that we have some better uses for Fort Devens, that we've gotten to at least an initial stage. And
Well, there are several operations in Washington which could be consulted on this, and we also have some people doing research in the area now, and MIT might be able to contribute, Harvard, and some of the other universities.
It's a great idea, and you should try to get other people on board. I mean,
I'm giving the idea to
yes.
you.
No.
Well,
No, you see, I mean, we're really a small group. We've got an awful lot of people who come to our meetings, and I hope that more do, because we're trying to be an educational group. But the real work has got to be done by individuals with the passion and the interest and the knowledge to do it. And you sound like just the person.
I think also that I'm sure there are people who are residents in this town that are influential in those areas, and I'm sure there are a lot of local talents and resources. And if you even get them on board, we'll do everything we can to make connections. We do have connections with a lot of different people, and we can facilitate stuff. It sounds like a great idea, but we would really like you to join up with us to make it a realistic proposal.
I'd like to insert that we have been happy to hear from people in town who have offered their services based on their experience, their work, knowledge, and so on. And in fact, we have someone who's given us a great deal of information just today on the environmental aspects of the ozone layer in the higher atmosphere, and it is such technical information as that which there is no way to acquire quickly. And we appreciate anyone who gives us any technical information that we can pass on to appropriate groups who will be working on environmental measures. There's a hand in the back. David Kay.
I think the question of strategy, there's a lot of people interested in doing things, a lot of people trying to do things. But how does the strategy in a situation like this evolve? For example, right now people are concerned or writing letters to whoever they can think to write a letter to, saying, we don't like this, it's a bad idea, it's stupid, don't do it. But we have to believe that there's a more strategic way to use that. Should we be, for example, writing to the FAA saying federal money is being used by a state agency which is circumventing meeting laws in the state? How does a strategy form in a situation like this where you have a lot of different communities all trying to contribute? Who forms that strategy? And there are conservation strategies, publicity strategies, legal strategies. How do those converge?
Well, just one thing on the side. I do have some letters here for people to sign. You specifically addressed the very first item, which is the FAA. I wasn't aware of it, so let me just explain it to you in case you're not aware of it, that we have something called the Central Massachusetts Legislative Caucus at the State House. And those are our reps and senators who are from Central Mass. And they have written the congressional delegation in Washington to please do everything in their power, and I hope it's an awful lot of power, to stop the FAA from distributing money to Massachusetts Aeronautics Commission. That was a very good move, but they're going to need support. So I have a letter here for people to sign to Kerry, Kennedy, Atkins, and Early. Now, you can either sign this letter and just leave it with us and we'll copy it and send it along, or you could take it home and use it as a model to write your own. The letter also refers to the Northeast Corridor Improvement Project, which right now is in a conference committee between the Senate and House. It's $208 million, and it represents the difference between electrification of a line between New Haven and Boston and no electrification, which means that we would not get that 3-hour trip to New York, which frankly we desperately need in order to convince people that we do not need a second major airport.
Are these letters going to be over here with the other material? Anyone who hasn't picked them up then, these are brand new, you didn't see them when you came in, so you may want to stop back again and pick them up before you leave.
And just to build upon the idea of strategizing and so on, that is an important question. And that was one of the reasons why CERT was established. And we come from different areas and we try to pull together strategy. We do have a legal committee, which is made of lawyers, pro bono lawyers. It's mostly the work of one lawyer at this point, but acting with other lawyers. And we also need more help there. We are trying to plan a legal strategy. There's also a technical committee. We certainly look forward to pulling other people on board in that. I agree, strategies are needed, and we have a lot of ideas. What we're lacking is time and energy to spread ourselves to all those areas. And we have a lot of contacts, so we can do other things as well. But it is important to be in one group. The CERT is a helpful group. I would suggest, if you have some ideas, the meeting in Lancaster tomorrow night would be a great place to share those. And we do break up into projects at the end of that.
Just in case you're all just dying to sign up, we have environmental committees, so people who are either interested in environmental issues or who work in the professions. It would be wonderful to have you. We have outreach, and outreach means you'll take our places. You'll be going everywhere and talking about airports. Fundraising, boy do we need fundraising. Newsletter, there are a few of us who have been writing the newsletter, and that's this guy that's over on the table. Political, that's when we get to go visit the legislature.
And I should point out that if we're going to give a lunch to the legislators, we've agreed to this. We have no idea how we're going to pay for it. But that's at least our concern right now, but it is a concern that's going to come up real soon.
And then the last one was legal.
In the back, yes. Tessa?
And I'm all about the strategy organized at the State House stage, October 9th. It seems to me that a lot of us should raise tonight and meeting tomorrow night could be about the
It does make sense, and the telephone number in Lincoln, I believe is still here, 617-259-9500.
Jean?
You're talking about the FAA. I was in South Carolina in April when the base closings were announced. And in South Carolina, the Myrtle Beach Air Force Base was closed, and the FAA planned to make it into a mega jetport international in a 20-year period. It sounded like a duplicate of what was happening here. And I think it would be wise for us to somehow find out how many places in the country that happened. There was another story I saw that same week in a paper, but I lost that to another part of the country. And then about the Northeast Corridor Conference. I called Sondlis's campaign office today to get a copy of his booklet on his platform, and I asked if it included anything on high-speed rail in New England. And oh no, it's all national. I think we must get him talking national on rail. And when we talk national, high-speed rail, I think we should talk from Portland to Richmond, Virginia. And that we must talk about a line that goes all the way non-stop from the East Coast to the West Coast. And get Sondlis, force him to get that somewhere into his agenda.
Yeah, I think we should also be talking to New England governors and also New York governor, after all, looking for a regional solution. We'd like to have local control, but we should gather people on board. That's one way to change the rules of the game.
Get outside of our areas and get the pressure coming in from.
And we should run things from Portland on down. George Mitchell, Maine, has been very strong for it.
Yeah, this is, you've heard the year of the tiger and the year of, this is the year of the airport. Everybody wants to build airports. North Carolina right now is trying to build a mega airport. They're called wayports. They're a good idea, but not here. They're meant to be about 15,000 to 20,000 acres of land all in one place, in remote cornfields someplace. But North Carolina is trying to put one in, I think somewhere around Charlottesville or Asheville. And this is another thought that what may be in store for us is one of these things, because basically what North Carolina wants to do is create an airport which would be used for cargo. And instead of the old days where you'd have a railroad line in the middle and you'd have the cars line up and you'd have manufacturing on each side and they'd load up and stuff and put it on the rail bed, the thought is, in North Carolina and maybe right here in Devens, is that wouldn't it be nice to have all of these companies lined up and the airplanes take the place of rail and they take off. And in a sense it's a possibility for this region because we are a high-tech region and it's high-tech products that tend to be shipped by air, not by sea, parts of them anyway. But the problem is that, is there enough business to generate that? We're losing manufacturing, about 25,000 jobs in the last 2 years, so I'm not sure that that's realistic.
Marge?
I want to pick up on that question about coordination a little bit, and I would suggest to you that you add one more thing to your list of possible things that people could volunteer for, and that would be that as long as we consider this a campaign, that we consider asking the services of people who have had experience managing campaigns. I'm quite sure there are advertising people within this area who could give us some advice about how to go about doing this in a professional way.
I think that's a good idea. It'd be nice to have even a part-time person on something like that, because this is a big effort. I think we're fighting for our towns at this point.
It's really survival, and it's no other way to express it.
Another question, okay, over here, yeah, Bill.
Yeah, I just had to be picking up some things the other day, and I noticed that in the last two Republican platforms, the national election, presidential elections, there was apparently a piece in there about revitalizing and the infrastructure, and one of the things that's mentioned is a big push in building new airports and updating the airport facilities. This is part of a national campaign. So it's not just a matter of Devens. These proposals are going to be cropping up everywhere very rapidly. And I think it's important in trying to discover the strategies that will work, the buttons to push, as it were. One of the important things I think it's necessary to understand is that what is the thing that's driving this proposal? And the essential component here is the money that is in the airport trust funds.
That's right, $5 billion.
Right. Now, that is where the energy is coming from. A governor in a state that's broke is proposing this huge project, and he's not even talking to the legislature. And the reason is because the money's in the trust fund. MAC is getting money from that trust fund to do the study. And I think from a political point of view, it's very important to do two things at once. And that is, on one hand, attack the source of the money to try to redirect it to other proposals, such as rail and so on. It really, in a way, is somewhat irrelevant to say that the airport is not needed and that rail may be, if the money is available for the airport and it's not available for a railroad. So the key thing is that we have to look at what is driving this proposal. Essentially, it's a pork barrel project, tapping available funds. And so I think you've got to start plugging holes, pumping holes in the barrel on one level. And I think on the other side of things, without being too hypocritical, while the trust fund is still in existence, dedicated to this one purpose of building airports, I think it's essential to tap into that money. From a legal point of view, there may be a case to be made for the communities to obtain money from this trust fund to do its own planning. I mean, essentially what Weld is proposing is this fiction that MAC is representing the interests of the area, the town, and the money is going to MAC to do the study. And I'm a little concerned that because we joined this committee and we're participating in it, we're in effect aiding in this fiction. And it might be more effective at some point further down the line for all the towns that belong to it to walk out and say, this is absurd. You're meeting without us. You're not dealing with us reasonably. Form our own committee, file suit for funds from the FAA, and let them pay for the opposition to the airport. I mean, I'm just suggesting that you can't. It's very. The other thing I would suggest is not let them set the agenda. Right now what's happening is you're running from one thing to another that they're doing. The siting committee, then there's going to be 3 sites, then it's going to be 1, then there'll be this, and then there'll be that. And it's very important, I think, to stop that process, this run around the bases, as it were. And I think the only way you can really do that effectively is to establish forums that they must participate in.
Right.
And the kind of thing that we should be thinking of doing is setting up a regional hearing through the state legislature and demanding, subpoenaing these people to show up and answer questions. I think the other thing is that the Freedom of Information process. If there's any money that we have to spend, other than to position ourselves now for whatever the legal fights are going to be, the other thing we should be doing is hounding with the Freedom of Information Act request. Every time they have a meeting, we should be in there the next week asking them for every piece of paper that came out of that meeting. The key thing here is to deny them the ability to operate a project. And right now what's happened is this whole thing's been cooked up. A lot of this talk about Devens as an airport's gone on for 20 years, and there's been a lot of speculative investments. I heard something the other day which made sense from a fellow, sort of on the other side of things, but he had an insight, which is very important. He said a lot of people are going to make money on this, even if the airport isn't built. And I thought, well, gee, how's that going to work? And it's very simple, and that is that if they can get the site proposed down to one site and have the land banked, so it's reserved for this purpose, even if they don't start doing any building right now. The commercial land in this area will skyrocket in value. And the residential land will plummet. And it's got nothing to do with whether it actually happens or not. So, I don't know, I don't want to run on, but I mean, there are things that that should be being done right now to position us. It's good to have a grassroots movement. Everybody should be calling the governor's office every day. I mean, it seems, I don't know, maybe once a week. Every day is not realistic, but it's a very
That's okay.
important.
Once a day's all right.
No,
It keeps the governor away.
well,
Yeah,
it's very important for another reason. You have to give people an idea of how they can do this. I mean, like, for instance, if you just tell everybody in town, look, whatever your street number is, divide it by 5. And whatever the leftover is, if it's 0, you call on Monday. If it's 1, you call on Tuesday, and so on. So everybody has a day assigned. And they call at the governor's office. Now, people may think, well, gee, what's that going to do? It's the psychological impact of being harassed constantly by these telephone calls. Eventually what will start happening is the governor's staff will start talking about alternatives to Fort Devens. Because, I mean, even though it seems trivial, that's a very important thing to be able to do. It applies pressure where he knows about it. I mean, you can chase him around the state, you can do all kinds of things, but if he comes in there every Tuesday and finds his staff is pissed off at him because they're getting telephone calls and they're very upset about it, that will have more of an impact than some high-minded study that shows that there are alternative uses to Fort Devens. He's not interested. He doesn't care. He sees this money in that trust fund. The state's practically broke, and here's a project where, golly, wouldn't it be wonderful if he could privatize the whole process, bring in his friends, and wind up starting an airport commission that turns out to be a wonderful business. And plus, he can promise all this money to the construction industry that's hounding him right now because they're having a problem. I mean, I just,
The sky's the limit, isn't it?
well, it's not, yeah, but the thing is that I think some of it takes money and some of it just takes a little bit of time.
Yeah, it's a combination of both, and actually most of those issues I agree with. I don't want to stop you, but maybe we can start commenting on some of it. You're quite right about the trust fund. It's a huge trust fund, and who controls it? The FAA controls it, but FAA wants to build airports.
But wait a minute, but right now, the trust fund is not being used to build airports.
It's used to underwrite the
That's right.
national debt.
That's right.
They hold it. Who controls it? They control
The Congress controls it.
I think Congress controls it.
The FAA administers it. There's a bill that was introduced by Daniel Moynihan, senator from New York.
Do they recommend the usage of it?
Well, no. See, the problem is the money's already being used to offset the national debt, okay, to make the deficit look less, just like the Social Security Trust Fund is. And Moynihan has introduced a bill into Congress saying that the money in that trust fund, 2 things. One is it should be spent, because what they're doing is they're not spending it to maintain the local airfields and doing all this other stuff. Actually, the aviation industry is upset about the way they're maintaining the trust because they're not spending it for what the aviation industry wants them to do, which is to maintain and improve current facilities. And the other, Moynihan is saying they should spend it or they should redirect it to other types of uses like regional transportation needs and stuff. So there's an effort where if we use our political muscle to help Moynihan's bill by getting our state people to support that, that's very important because that undermines the pork barrel. It puts a hole in the pork barrel.
Yeah, what we could do is actually work with the Central Mass Legislative Caucus to work with the Mass Congressional Delegation and actually try to change some of that. I know people do apply for grants to FAA for planning. Maybe we maybe the caucus should apply for some of the grants if they can. I agree that you have to make your own rules, because if you don't make your own rules, you become victim, and this is a case of becoming victim.
I just want to say, if just everybody in this room right now took the suggestion of, take your street number, and from that derive, a 0 to 4 number, okay, and use that as the day, pick the day of the week, and call every week. Don't be intimidated. They'll ask for your name. They'll have it on the computer list, and the next time you call, they'll say, oh, you called before. And you just happily agree with them, yes, I did call before. And they say, well, I'll send you a message to the governor, and I'll hang up, and you call back, and you say, no, I'm sorry, I have a new message from the governor. What you have to do is you have to, if everybody in this room just did that, right now, the number of people we have to maybe get 6 or 7 calls a day, that's very important. That kind of persistence, because what it does also is it gives them a barometer, a reading on what's happening out there. If they see a lot of activity on the phone, they think they have to multiply that by 10 or 20 to what's going on in grassroots organizations and so on.
Thanks,
It's very
thanks for
important
you.
to make people unhappy about the project
Yeah.
and the government's.
It is true. I mean, even state legislators, they, to get 6 calls, I think it's a tidal wave, because it's the tip of the iceberg. I think that's true, but if you do it in collaborations, it's even more powerful. And remember the case of the Stop and Larry the Lobster. It was 10,000 postcards that locked up their mail system, and 32,000 signatures that got Larry the Lobster to speak to the governor. I think we should collaborate and swamp, yes, and then do it strategically. The governor could change this overnight and ask congressional delegation to change this overnight.
Did everybody see that picture of the governor with the lobster? Yeah, well, it was great. We thought we'd all dress up as 747s or wet ducks or something, and maybe we'd get to see the governor too.
Yeah,
You know,
Halloween's coming.
Yeah, Halloween's coming. We have a really good time. You know, the question about, the suggestion about the public records law, I mean, I think that's a really good one. I started it today by asking for the LDN curves on these communities. You know, they're available, they're there. I went to the person's office last week and asked for them, and she said, oh, I'm sorry, but they're at our consultant's office. I just don't have them to give you. So I thought about that for a weekend, and I thought, well, now, wait a minute. It's in the report. I want to be able to get it. So today I handed her a Public Information Act. That very moment, Saltmarsh was telling everybody at the meeting, at the MAC's regular monthly meeting today, that, oh no, he didn't have it in his possession. It was at the consultant's, and we just have to wait for 6 or 8 weeks or so. And everyone sat there doing this. And I thought, no, we've definitely got to become more assertive about these things. The only reason why I didn't ask for more, we fully intend to go to the governor's office and ask him about anything that either he or his lieutenant governor or anybody in the executive department might have had with Devens while they were talking about closing it. Because clearly there's a little interest there, you know, in the what's it called, TAD report? Bill, the TAD report, which was part of the closure report, it was mentioned in that report that Fort Devens could become an airport. So somebody was talking to somebody, and we sort of like to find out who was, if we can figure it out. Now, but the only reason why I didn't ask for all that is, quite frankly, 2 reasons. One is we haven't organized as a nonprofit yet. We're asking our attorneys to look into that. And the reason why that may be important is that under the public records law, they can ask you to pay for not only the copy fees, but also they can ask you to pay for the search time. So if and it can be the person who's the least expensive, but the one who can search most efficiently. So that could mean that we're talking about a $30 to $50 hour person.
Yeah, although the possibility is actually a municipality could do that. I know Harvard did ask for something in the Information Act, and they didn't produce it in the 10 days they were supposed to produce it. I'm not quite sure how that got resolved, but maybe going to municipalities would be a way of waiving that.
Well, the nonprofit would help because apparently you can ask to have the fees waived.
Good. We're a nonprofit. Citizens Protect Residential Harvard is nonprofit. We'll start taking that up.
But are you tax exempt?
Yes.
You can't do it.
Are you tax exempt?
You can't do
No.
it then, or you'll lose your tax exempt.
All right. I see 2 more hands, and I'm going to call on you, but I do want to make a couple of announcements so that anyone who starts walking out will be aware of these. First of all, I would ask anyone who has not signed the attendance sheet, which is at the door right near the exit sign, please do so as you leave. And second, we very much want to have volunteers. We want volunteers to offer to do things. We have forms up here that you can sign, things you can take with you, and we also would like any donations that you care to make. They will be accepted tonight. We have blank postcards that we are going to print. We're asking you to choose your variety here. We'll make up a pack of 10 for you and give them to you to mail. We have 2 ideas for that. We have blank letters up here. We have the Assert newsletter, and we also have the airport fact sheet done by the citizens in Harvard. And I would be very happy to have you be sure to stop by this desk if you haven't already. And on this weekend, on the Common, the T-shirts will be available, and we hope the bumper stickers. They will be available shortly after. T-shirts are definitely available, being sold at the Storytelling Festival on the Common, and will be available thereafter at many places, many times. 2 people over here with their hands up. Yes.
guess I'm a little surprised I haven't heard the name Massport crop up here. And they've been, I guess, one, what is your status as a, I mean, are they also, can you get their records from Freedom of Information Act? And two, one of the things that surprised me is right after the first round of foreclosing went through, and this was before, well, and Devens was kept open. I know there was a house organ you could get at Logan Airport that described Massport's views, which was, they said explicitly, we're very sorry to see Devens was not closed down. We really want Devens. So, I don't know.
You know, Massport's kind of laying low.
Well, yeah, I mean, they're obviously, in my mind, they're obviously the ones who are out.
Well, we're not sure. There's some discussion that this airport may indeed be a regional airport run by more than one state.
Well, why was there passing of fees? Does anybody?
Why did Pease not become another airport?
Why did Massport refuse to even consider fees?
Well, because it's not in Massachusetts.
Right.
They want to keep it in Massachusetts.
They want to keep any profits coming to Massachusetts. It's
Gail?
I'm
going to read up to you. Gail?
Yeah, two things. This gentleman's question brought to mind the fact that a portion, albeit a small portion, of MAC's first grant money came from Massport, in addition to the bulk of funding that was given by FAA. My second comment, would it be a good idea to ask your state and federal legislators to get various documents and records for this group, as opposed to trying to go about it piecemeal in an individual basis?
Well, I guess we could do that. I'm not sure that they want to, though. It's kind of a nasty thing for, I kind of want, we'll ask, but a rep may not want to be involved in
My
that.
feeling is that since this is purely volunteer and nobody has the time or money in more than two hands, and we do elect and pay for these people to do their business.
Yeah, but see, they have to make deals. We'll ask.
Although it's interesting, some of the documents we want, they're not going to give up easily. But they're important documents. Just a little bit of the Massport stuff. Massport, the people in Massport, a lot of them came from the previous administration, which of course is a different political party. So there is some friction between Massport, Executive Office of Transportation and Construction, which is actually sort of nice. However, such as Fred Sagucci, which used to be in the Executive Office of Transportation and Construction under the caucus, was quoted as he left office that there's no regional imperative for a second major airport. We're not quite sure exactly what his story is. He got appointed to Massport. So did the Commissioner of Massachusetts Public Works, Jane Garvey, who's now Director of Aviation there, and the Secretary of Economic Affairs, Al Raines, who's now the Director of Massport. So it's sort of a Democratic holdover there, so that there's some natural friction. Massport, just to give you an idea, Massport is in charge of Logan, they're in charge of Hanscom, and then of course they do the seaport, and they have a lot of powers. It's hard telling exactly where they fit in on this.
I have two questions, then I'm going to close the meeting. I think we've had a wonderful presentation. Jean and the man in back.
On November 7th, there's a meeting at Anthony's Pier River in Boston about the airport. It's a 4-hour meeting, and the moderator is Mr. Bucher, head of aeronautics for New Hampshire. And there are 4 things that Mr. Bucher has said.
Jean, could you just get up and let the people hear you? They aren't hearing you. Turn
You
around.
want a microphone?
Come on up here.
So that we can go.
On November 7th, and what's the number this year?
Pier 4.
At Anthony's Pier 4 in Boston, there's a 4-hour meeting of aeronautics people. And Mr. Bucher, who is head of aeronautics for New Hampshire, is the moderator. Now, there are 4 things that he has said, that I've heard him say. 1, he wishes he could have the second major airport at Pease. He wishes especially he could have cargo. But Sununu wants the airport in Massachusetts. And Bucher's final remark is there really should not be a second major airport anywhere in New England.
And at that meeting, the Conservation Law Foundation will make a 1-minute presentation. Out of a 4-hour meeting, they were given 1 minute.
I think Phil can talk about that.
Yeah. We will also get it. I've been promised tentatively that we will also get, SIT plan will get 1 minute also.
It's nice that they're sharing.
It sounds like a meeting where we ought to be there as citizens protesting. Yes, in the back.
You meet them outside with signs.
I'd like to second this gentleman's suggestion here that we involve a lot more people in this effort, and by asking people to make a call once a week, I think that's the way to do it. I think what we really need now is to create a consciousness here of what's going on. I think there's a lot of denial going on in this community and other communities. Well, many people are concentrating on specific, more sophisticated issues. I think the real need right now is to draw more people into this situation so that people are aware of it and involved in it and feel some sense of belonging to it. So I'd just like to reiterate that we can get people doing things on a consistent basis, and I think we're going to be dedicated.
Thank you. Kathy,
I
important?
just wanted to put one twist on that.
Sure.
I have friends in Concord and other towns that are in support but are kind of busy to call, and I have their permission to call the governor's office and say, hello, I am so-and-so from Concord. I call various times, various people, they do not yet know it's all the same voice. So, try and get other people from other towns to their permission.
That's creativity.
Where there's a will, there's a way. Thank you, Kathy, for that idea. I believe then that we will say thank you for coming and thank you to our guests for making this fine presentation. I hope you all are inspired to make phone calls. Excuse me, Jesse, you're pointing this on?
Okay, there was one additional suggestion, and that actually is pertinent. It's about Representative Oakley, Joe Oakley, who's out in the South Boston area. He has a lot of control over what happens with the rail. He is actually very fundamental to helping the rail initiative go through the Northeast. He needs more calls. Call him up.
He also needs those letters signed and sent over there, so please do that.
Yeah, apparently Representative Oakley is not getting very many calls. He needs calls. We would like to have the rail and it'll save us a lot of grief.